Hi guys, it's Nick, the ASMR nerd, and welcome to another episode of Relaxing Reviews. Now, those of you who frequent the channel probably know that I'm a big fan of mechanical keyboards. That comes as no surprise to most of you, I expect. But specifically, I love 60% mechanical keyboards like this guy right here, the Ann Pro. 60% boards are so cute. They're diminutive, they're these compact little boards that have everything you need and nothing you don't, basically. They pack a surprising amount of functionality into a very compact and efficient footprint. And that's why I was very excited to be given the opportunity to review another 60% board. Today, we're looking at the Motospeed CK61 keyboard supplied by our friends over at banggood.com today. And on paper, this little board has everything you could ask for and then some. For starters, it's only 45 US dollars, which is pretty much the entry level point for 60% mechanical keyboards. So it's already kind of appealing for that reason, but doesn't stop there. This little board uses very interesting switches, Kailh Box switches, which are purported, at least, to have a number of advantages over Cherry MX switches and Cherry MX clones. This is my first time checking out box switches, Kailh's box switches. These are the Box White switches. I'll talk a little bit more about why they're so special later in the review, but the point is that these are no garden variety budget switches. These are genuine Kailh Box switches on a budget board. Moreover, it's got full RGB backlighting, and again, this is coming in at the $45 price point. So on paper, really interesting. In practice, well, you'll have to see. You're gonna have to wait to the end of the review to see, but let me just say, I've never been this conflicted about a keyboard before, and I think that it is a fantastic option for some people, and for others, very much not. And you'll have to watch the review to find out why, or I suppose you can skip to the end if you really want to be like that. But at any rate, very interesting board. I'd like to point out that if you think this is the board for you as you're watching the review, or once you've heard the conclusion at the end, heard my verdict, there is a link down in the video description at which you can purchase one of these boards, and for the first time ever, if you purchase through this link, some of that comes back to support the channel. So click through on the link down in the video description. I'll also post it in a top level comment. I'll pin it up at the top of the comment section. And for your troubles, there's also a handy dandy little coupon code down there that you can use to get this board for just $39.99 US, which obviously sweetens the pot a little bit, doesn't it? So, but of course, before you do any such thing, make sure you watch the end of the review so that you know my full opinion on this board and you have some sense of whether it's for you or not. So, with all those words out of the way, without further ado, let's take a closer look at the Motospeed CK61 mechanical keyboard. And here we have the Motospeed CK61 in box. And you can see that the packaging has this matte black cardboard exterior with a shiny, if I can get it to catch the light, shiny, there we are, red Motospeed logo. And this is the same aesthetic that we saw used for the packaging on Motospeed's CK103 mechanical keyboard, which was a full-size keyboard with RGB backlighting, and pardon me, I reviewed that some time ago. The Motospeed logo, I suppose, is this cat. Is that a cyber cat? I don't know. Anyway, but overall, it's aesthetically pleasing enough. It says over here, live for games, which is, well, it's a better logo than many, or a better slogan than many I've heard, or many I've seen, actually. Slogans for gaming hardware are often really, really cheesy. I remember Asus had some really hilarious ones for a while. Like rock solid, heart touching, I think was it. Anyway, neither here nor there. The point is, the packaging looks okay, although, as you can see, it's a little bit worse for wear, which I think was actually the issue with the CK103 as well. I seem to recall that the front of the box was kind of caved in like this during shipping. And that's a bummer. But hopefully it hasn't damaged anything inside. We'll see how it's packed in there when we open it up. But we'll do a quick little tour around the outside. Nothing on that end. Nothing on the back. Nothing on this end. However, on the flap, we've got all kinds of information here. You can probably read some of that. Most of it appears to be in Chinese. No surprises there. But it says here, Motospeed CK61 RGB backlit mechanical keyboard. Support 14 kinds of LED lighting effects. Multimedia function key combination. Support for custom recording key backlighting. Free of EEPROM memory. Adopt flash memory chip. Okay. Full mechanical switch, professional gaming players, standard equipment. And a quick win. Avoid fighting game by accident and cut out the desktop. Which I think they mean there's a Windows key lock. So that you don't hit the Windows key and leave your game by accident. Nothing else here really except for Motospeed contact information. And then here you can see maybe some Chinese check boxes. I can't really read, but it says black here, which I assume refers to the chassis color. And here it says box, which I assume refers to the Kailh Box switches. Perhaps it says box white. I don't know. I can't read the characters. Other than that, just a little barcode on the back, and that's it. So the packaging's a little bit flashier and more informative than some things we've seen. For instance, the boards from Aki or the boards from Velocifier. Those boxes are very, very plain, but not as flashy as others we've seen. Rapu, Bloody, they have some very flashy boxes. I do like the aesthetic. I just wish it wasn't so squashed. Anyway, let's open this sucker up and see what we've got inside. And of course, because it's a 60% board, it's a small box. Okay, so we can see inside that despite the exterior damage to the box, the keyboard itself is well protected, nicely nestled in here between two big chunky pieces of foam, providing protection. We have a user guide, which we'll take a peek at in a moment. We have what appears to be actually a very nice braided cable. Again, we'll look at that in just a moment. We have the board nestled in here. Oh, you can hear those clicks. Listen. It's the key, space bar. Oh, those feel, I like those. Those feel nice. Alright, but all in due time. We'll get to the board in a second. Gotta get through everything else first here. These are the big protective pieces of foam. You can see the board itself is wedge shaped. Just fits in there. And the last item in here appears to be some kind of product registration or perhaps a warranty card. I'm trying to figure out if it has any English on it. It has a little bit about components, like what it's made of, down at the bottom there. This side appears to be all Chinese. Off the top of my head, I do not know what kind of warranty is offered for this, but I'll have to look into it. I expect it's 1 year. That's pretty typical. Anyway, there's something included in here that probably talks about it. Presumably, Banggood will have more information, or if not Banggood, then Motospeed's website. I'll look into it before the end of the review, and I'll let you guys know. And that is everything. Nothing else to be seen inside. So, put the box aside. We'll take a quick look at the pack ends. You know what I just realized? There's no keycap puller included. How could they? I don't really care. I've got 1,000,001 keycap pullers, and generally the keycap pullers included with the boards are not of the greatest quality. Really what you want is something like this. Just the wire type puller. These work a lot better than those little circular pulley guys with the little prongs. But I just find it shocking they didn't include it. I think every other board I have ever reviewed has had one. So, but perhaps extreme cost savings, I don't know. But this doesn't look like extreme cost savings. Look, this is a braided cable, nicely braided too. It feels nice and thick. It's got the Motospeed logo molded onto the USB-A end of things and a little cap. It looks gold-plated, but hard to know, right? Could just be made to look that way. Either way, this is the end it'll plug into your PC. We've got a little ferrite choke here. And then, oh, look at that. I'm impressed. It's a USB Type-C connector. Granted, this is just going to be a USB 2 cable. It's not USB 3 or anything, but the USB Type-C connector, I like these guys because they're reversible, right? And I wish more keyboards would employ the Type-C connector. as opposed to the older, I guess it's micro USB or mini USB on some boards. But anyway, that's actually really nice to see. So, and check it out. It comes with a Velcro cable tie, and it's yeah, it's pretty decently long. And look at, it's a good quality cable. I am color me impressed by this cable. I expected something much more basic for a board at this price point. This is already a very cheap board considering the number of features it packs in. And the fact that it's not using cheap switches either, right? So anyway, nice cable. Good to see. Next up, let's take a quick peek at the user manual. Has a picture of the board on the front. It says CK61 RGB backlight mechanical keyboard. Alright, so we open it up and we are met with a lot of Chinese. It could be that it's just Chinese first. Lots more. Okay, here's some English. Yeah. Right up at the top here it says runs on Windows XP, Windows 7, 8, and Vista. I don't know if you can see it there. But presumably also Windows 10. Now it doesn't say anything about Mac, like OS X or Linux on here, so it might be out of luck if you want it for those. But at least it doesn't say that they're supported. Anyway, keyboard parameters, weight, dimensions, lifetime. It says the switches are rated for 50 million keystrokes, which is interesting because I think Kailh Box switches are actually rated for 80 million lifetime keystrokes. That's funny that they would undersell that. I could be wrong about that, but I think their official spec is 80 million. Anyway, weight is listed as 465 grams, and it's not a terribly heavy board, actually. Yeah, it feels kind of light compared to other boards I've reviewed. That said, many of the other boards I've reviewed are wireless, right? So they have to fit a battery in. They're going to be a bit heavier. And then all kinds of function key combinations listed here. Support common game mode button backlight and custom recording button backlight function. So the English here, not great, but you can sort of figure out what's going on here. It's talking about changing your backlighting effects. We'll of course take a closer look at that later after the unboxing and before the typing test. Brightness and speed adjustments, direction. What is this? Function 1 to achieve transcoding function. I see. So you can turn, you have to press function and the 1 key to turn the number keys into F keys. It's almost like a lock mode. And then function 2 changes a bunch of keys into like nav cluster. That's interesting. Okay. Because normally you just press the function key and hold it and then press the corresponding key to get that secondary function layer. But it looks like you have to toggle. It's like a toggle for different modes. That could be useful in some cases, but super annoying in others. Same with the arrow keys, actually. Well, we'll just have to try it out and see how it is in practice, right? Maybe there's multiple modes. This is more about lighting effects. Holy cow, there's a lot. Goodness, we got like a small dissertation on lighting modes, which I thought was on the previous page, but anyway, I'll take some time to look through this, figure that stuff out so I can show it to you in the next segment after the unboxing here. But let's put that to the side for now and look at the main event. I'm quite keen to check this out. Okay, so here we have a very clicky board. And yeah, it's quite light. It's definitely light. But it doesn't feel too bad. Standard 60% layout. There's no weirdness going on here with the layout, so it should be very compatible with aftermarket keycaps, which is nice. The case reminds me a lot of the An Pro, and I think these guys are probably gunning for the An Pro. That crowd, you know. Now the An Pro, of course, is wireless. This is not, but in terms of budget, RGB mechanical 60% boards, that's kind of the market these guys are obviously shooting for. And it comes in much cheaper than the An Pro, of course, so that's a consideration. But yeah, wedge-shaped keyboard. It's got these kind of beveled, not beveled, what do you call this? Mitered corners? I don't know. Anyway, and around all these edges as well. USB Type 3, or USB Type C, excuse me, on the back there. Right in the center, so it's not offset to either side, it's right in the middle. The shell, the case, feels it feels fine. It feels slightly hollow, maybe, but it feels alright. On the back, we've got some branding, the Motospeed branding, also CK61, some certifications, nothing fancy really. I think we've got some plastic on here that we can pull off, so it looks like to me. Yeah, let's do that. This is always super satisfying to me. There we go. It's just got shiny black stickers underneath, but let's see if we can get this one off. There we go. Very nice. We've got little rubber feet, rubberized feet, which are actually already picking up some dust. One on each corner. No flip out feet, so you're stuck with this board at the angle provided, basically. This slight incline, probably 5-degree incline if I had to guess. But it's not necessarily a terrible thing. It seems to be pretty common actually on 60% boards. I will say, it's funny, it's matte all the way around, matte plastic, probably just ABS. But then on these angles, it's glossy. You see that? Look at how many fingerprints it's already picked up. It's kind of gross looking, isn't it? Why would you do that? Why would you put this weird strip of glossy plastic? I don't know. It's not the end of the world, especially because you're probably not handling the backside of your board that much. I mean, I'm handling this a lot because I'm turning it over in my hands and showing it off to you guys, but it just seems like a weird choice to go glossy on those angles. But anyway, all right, so as I mentioned, it looks like a completely bog standard layout, which means aftermarket caps should work great. These caps, however, are going to last you. They're not the most aesthetically pleasing caps ever. The font is a bit gamery. In fact, they look very much like the caps used on Motospeed's CK103. They're probably the same things, which means that these are probably double shot ABS. And it does in fact look like the primary legends are double shot. I'll pull one off in a second. We'll double check. Secondary legends, as usual, are just pad printed. I can feel they're slightly raised, so those might be prone to wearing off with extended use, but I don't think those primary legends will. So let's pull off the cap to take a look at it, and also to take a look at the switch beneath, which is what I'm most interested in. So, as one might expect, these are ABS. They're not PBT, but they're pretty textured. And they feel nice. They don't feel like they're going to shine up real fast. And the primary legends are definitely double shot with these pad printed secondary legends. They're not the thickest caps I've seen. You know, they got a bit of flex to them. But I've certainly seen worse. So they'll get the job done. Again, they're not going anywhere. They will last you for years and years and years, I am certain, if you don't mind the aesthetic. The font, again, a little gamery for me, but that's a matter of personal preference. But let's take a look at this. Let's take a look at this. We have here one beautiful little Kailh Box White switch. You can see why it's called a box switch. It's because the stem is surrounded by a box. It's a little bit thicker as well across. And there's a few reasons for this. Let's talk a little bit about these Kailh Box Whites. Let's get into some details here. As you can tell, and as I've mentioned, they are very clicky. And this is my first experience with Kailh Box Whites, and the click is different than I'd like a Cherry MX Blue or an Autemu Blue, for instance. It is more pronounced, and it feels more precise. In these switches, the click is generated by a little click bar, whereas in the Cherry switches and their clones, it's generated by a little slider mechanism. But there's a number of actually benefits to these Kailh Box White switches. They improve upon Cherry's tried and true design in a variety of ways. They have slightly shorter travel. They have, I think, 3.6 millimeters of travel as opposed to 4, which means they bottom out a little bit sooner, which makes for potentially faster keystrokes if you're bottoming out each time. Their actuation force is identical to that of Cherry MX Blues. It's 50 gram actuation force, so that's to overcome the click, with 60 gram peak force. And this box design with the wider stem, as I mentioned, there's several benefits inherent in this design. One is that these are actually rated for better dust and liquid, like water resistance, than cherry switches. I think they're rated for the IP56 standard. I could be wrong about that, but I think that means that it'll keep dust out and it'll keep out a certain amount of water. Yeah, I wouldn't submerge it, but a spill should be okay. But perhaps even more important is that this box housing reduces key wobble, at least in theory. We'll find out, I guess, once I test this sucker out. But it's supposed to prevent wobble, and just from looking at these switches, or these keys, yeah, actually, totally, these have almost no wobble to them. They feel very sturdy. Not as much the space bar, but I love the feel of that space bar, though. It's a very precise click. Very precise. But beyond all that, beyond all those sort of durability benefits and whatever, the really critical thing about these box switches is they're designed to reduce what they call hysteresis. And without getting too nerdy here, it's basically designed to reduce the delay that exists on cherry switches between the tactile response of the switch, so the click, and the actual actuation of the switch, the operation point at which the switch sends a signal. And on Cherry MX Blues and their clones, there's actually a gap. If you look at like the force diagram for a Cherry MX Blue switch, the actuation or the operation point is below the clicky point, essentially, as is the reset point. And so that can cause some issues if you're trying to double tap or rapidly click a switch. Whereas if you look at the force diagram for Kailh Box White switches, you'll see that the operation point and the tactility point, whatever you want to call it, and the recovery point, they all fall at the same point on the force diagram. So in theory, when you feel the click is when the signal should be sent. And that is definitely an improvement over Cherry MX switches and their clones, if it does in fact work that way. It should feel more responsive. Okay, that's a lot of nerdy switch talk, which I enjoy. Maybe you do too, but really the proof is in the pudding, isn't it? As they say. Which means we have to try this thing out. But before we do that, a couple things. One, I'm going to put this cap back on. I was actually just noticing, looking at the back of this, that I don't think that USB-C connector is quite centered. Looks to me like it's a little off-center. I could be wrong, but it looks to me like it's a little bit further towards this side, which would be the left side of the board, than to the right side of the board. Doesn't really matter, but I just observed that while staring at the back of it there. But also, we need to do a flex test for the board because, yeah, this thing feels a little bit hollow, a little bit lighter than I'm used to. Not quite as solid as I'm used to. I should point out that the back plate, I don't know if you can see it, probably not. You probably saw it when the keycap was off there, but the back plate, I believe, is just a white plastic. That's what I can see through between the switches, or between the caps. So a lot of plastic in here, not a lot of metal in the construction. Not the solidest feeling board I've ever laid hands on, but let's give it a flex. A little bit of flex there. I don't know if you can see that. Yeah, a little bit of flex in the chassis. I feel like if I really applied my strength, might be able to just twist this thing in half, but probably not. I'm not that strong. But yeah, there's a bit of flex there. But in day-to-day operation, I don't think that's going to be a problem necessarily. But anyway, yeah, even these bigger switches, they feel really solid. It's the switches are the real star of the show here. I mean, love the feel of that keyboard, or the space bar, sorry. A very precise feeling click. Anyway, first things first, I'm going to plug this thing in, spend a bit of time experimenting with the backlight, and then I'll show you guys, so we can see what the backlight can do, how many different options it has, how those LEDs look, and it does have full perky RGB backlighting as far as I know, so that should look nice. And then the typing test, which is what I'm really looking forward to, because yeah, really impressed with the feel of these switches so far. Can't wait to try typing on them. So let's go look at the LEDs and then do some typing. All right, so here we have the CK61 plugged in and looking very colorful indeed. The LEDs are bright and vibrant, although not as bright or vibrant as some others I've seen. For whatever reason, the N Pro seems to be the class leader in this regard. For whatever reason, it's just the gradient seems smoother, the LEDs seem brighter, but you know, we do have several brightness levels available on here, so said the manual. I spent a bit of time reading the manual trying to figure out exactly how to control the lighting on here. So this is just one of, I believe it claims 14 lighting effects. This is sort of the rainbow wave across the board. And holding down function and pressing U, I, O, and P control, I believe it's speed for O and P and brightness for U and I. Let's see. So function U. Is that getting brighter? Maybe. Let's go I. Ah, that's definitely getting. Okay, so that turns it right off. It's function I. Function U. Looks like we have 1, 2, 3, 4 brightness steps and then off. So I guess 5 total brightness steps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so this is as bright as it gets. And yeah, it's pleasantly bright, but it's not the brightest I've ever seen, I guess. But it certainly gets the job done. O and P will change the speed of the effect, whatever the selected effect is. So let's speed this one up a little. Okay, so that's maximum speed. You can see it's cycling a lot faster. By the way, I should point out, as is always the case, you probably see some rippling on screen that is not related to this lighting effect. It'll maybe be a little bit more obvious once we switch to a solid color, but that's just due to the shutter speed of the camera and the LEDs. LEDs have, I guess, a refresh rate, basically, a frequency associated with them, and anyway, it's an artifact of the camera filming LEDs, but you'll probably see it better in a moment. All right, let's slow this thing down again. So it gets very slow. that's as slow as it goes. You can actually kind of see each key illuminating a different color. Let's keep it kind of middle of the road. That looks pretty good. Okay, so if we hold down function and then press on the right hand, bottom right corner here, that's where the function key is, and we press the equivalent of the right Windows key, I guess. I don't know. I don't actually know what that key is called. On some keyboards it's just a Windows key, on others it has like a little list kind of icon. I actually have no idea what that key is called. Anyway, you hold down function, you press that, and okay, so this is you know, the classic press the key, it illuminates in a random color. So that's that. Alright, we've got some crazy ripples here. And regardless of the effect you're on, you can hold down function and press right control to change the color of the lighting effect. So this is some crazy fast. It's like a sine wave, I guess, is what this is. Maybe, I'm not sure. Let's see if we can slow it down a little. There we go. Yeah, it's a little bit more obvious what's going on. Now let's change the color again. So we can cycle through a variety of sort of primary colors here. Not exclusively primary, but a selection of colors. And a rainbow option. We're back to the red we started on. Alright, let's try something else. Okay, so this is a solid color breathing effect, and again, we can just cycle through colors. This is fading through different colors. All the colors, I guess, and I imagine, yeah, you can't change the color on this effect because by default it has all the colors. It fades through them. Now what's this? Yes, the classic row, I don't know what you want to call it, but the row illuminates whichever row you press a key in. And I imagine we can change the color. Yes, we certainly can. Let's cycle back to multicolor. If I can figure out, oh, I think I missed it. Whatever, next effect. Okay, so this is kind of a raindrop style, I guess, where different keys are just illuminating randomly, and by default it's a rainbow, you know, multicolored, but as with the other effects, you can change that. Very good. Okay, this is a little different from anything I've seen before. It's like the colors are cycling around the keyboard in a circle. That's kind of neat. Rainbow circle. Now this one lights up the whole keyboard every time you press a key in rainbow or your selected color. And this one is like the raindrops, but it looks like the keys are always lit and they're just cycling through colors. And okay, so this one, every time you press a key, the color changes. They're all illuminated and multicolor. Can we change the color here? Yeah, what happens? It just fades out and back in the same color. Interesting. You can hopefully see that there. Very well then. And any more? Okay, this looks like each row is a fixed color. Oh, and now it's breathing. That was when I hit the change color button. I don't quite know what the point of this is. It seems like it's stuck in this color arrangement, but You can make it breathe if you want, anyway. Alright, and then we get to our two game-specific modes where there are certain clusters of keys illuminated. Now, here's a good question. Can I change that? Doesn't appear to be so. And then we're back to our wave, our rainbow wave. Also worth noting, you can change the direction of the rainbow wave. Now it's going left to right. Now it's going right to left. That's with function Alt, function right Alt. And I believe you can get straight into the game-specific modes by going function 5. Yeah, function 6. And then you can get back to your previously selected lighting mode with function left Windows or right Windows key. There we go. And that appears to be the LED functionality present. It's not bad. It doesn't appear to have a per key backlighting option. I could be mistaken about that, but I wasn't able to figure out a way to illuminate individual keys or change the colors of illuminated keys in this game-specific mode. And that's where I would expect to find that functionality. But it does have a healthy array of different lighting patterns and color options. It's on par with pretty much all the other budget keyboards that I've tested. Again, in that regard, the An Pro stands out as having full per key backlighting with like 16 point whatever million colors per key available, and that's controlled by an app. Obviously, all this is controlled just in hardware on the keyboard. I think the Bloody keyboard that I tested also had some pretty advanced functionality that way. But anyway, nevertheless, an impressive array of lighting modes for a $45 keyboard, no doubt, even if they are pretty similar to what we see on other similar boards. All right, well, now that we've taken a look at the lighting, which is no slouch, I think it's time to put it through its paces. Are you guys ready for some clicking? Let's do the typing test, after which we will reconvene. I will share my experiences using the board, let you know what it's like to type on and to use in extended use. And then we'll run down the pros and cons. All right, but first, the typing test. Alright, so here we are after having checked out the board, unboxed it, looked at the RGB backlighting, and taken it for a drive with a typing test. In between then and now, a great deal of time has passed, as a matter of fact, and I have used this board extensively for over a month now. And as I alluded to in the introduction to this video, I have never been this conflicted about a keyboard before. Let me tell you why. First of all, the typing experience with this board is phenomenal. And this is really about the switches. Those Kailh Box White switches are excellent. I was, tapping them, clicking them a little bit during the unboxing and stuff, and I was saying how I really liked the feeling, the tactile response they provided. And the typing experience with them is a dream. They are wonderfully clicky. They are smooth. There's no wobble to speak of. They're not scratchy at all. All of the keys on this board worked as expected, so no faulty switches. And I can say that these are, without a doubt, the best tactile switches, or the best, I should say, clicky. Tactiles typically reserved for like Cherry MX Browns and those style of switches, but these are the best clicky switches that I've ever used. So in comparison to something like a Cherry MX Blue and now Temu Blue or related clones, the click feels much more precise, and because the operation point is right in line with the actuation point where it clicks down, they feel really, really responsive. And so typing on this thing, like I said, is fantastic. I just want to keep typing. And it's enough to make me question my loyalty to tactile switches like my Gatoron Browns. I've long been a fan of sort of the switches with a little bump but no click, those tactile switches, but I really, really like these clicky Kailh Box Whites. So the switches on this board are a big win, no doubt. However, there's a very big problem with this board, and that is the implementation of the secondary function layer. So on a normal keyboard, a normal compact board like a 60%, where you have a function layer, you hold down the function key, and then the secondary function layer is active as long as the function key is depressed. And so you hold down the function key and you press the corresponding key, whatever it is, and the secondary function of that key is activated. Nice and easy, right? For example, on the AN Pro, as long as you're holding down the function key, W, A, S, and D become arrow keys. And that's really functional. It's maybe not quite as fast as having dedicated arrow keys, but that's the price that you pay for a compact footprint. And that's how every keyboard with a secondary function layer that I've ever used has worked. Not so with the Motospeed CK61. The way the secondary function layer works here is you have to press the function key and then press a toggle button. They happen to be the number keys, so it's like function 2, for instance, will change a cluster of keys on the right hand side of the board from their primary function to their secondary function, which is things like home and insert and page up and page down and print screen and those kinds of things, which sounds okay, perhaps. The benefit, to be fair, there is a benefit. The benefit of this system is that you don't have to keep the function key held down. You just go function key 2, and then it's toggled on, and you can just press those keys and use them to your heart's content, and then you press function 2 again to turn that secondary function layer off and go back to the default functions for those keys. I can see why in someone's head that would make a good, or that would make good sense. That would seem like a good idea. In practice, it is exceptionally annoying and awkward to use, because usually when you're activating those kinds of keys, you're only pressing one or maybe two. The delete key happens to be on this secondary function layer as well. So if you want to use delete or home or anything like that, every time you have to go function 2, then you can use what you want, and then function 2 to turn it off. If you're just going to press one or two keys, that means that you're tripling the number of keystrokes that you would normally have to make with a regular function layer system. And it just gets really annoying. The arrow keys are the same, so function 3 will turn a set of keys in the bottom right. It'll toggle them into arrow keys. Then you have to press function 3 to toggle it off again. The number row across the top of the keyboard, function 1 will turn that into the F row. Function 1 will turn it off again. I cannot stress how annoying this is when you're just trying to do some basic productivity work. Like, I don't know, I often use like the F2 button to rename things in Windows. F2 will just open the name for editing, basically, of a file or a folder or whatever. And having to go function 2 and then, function 1 and then press 2, do my editing, and then function 1 again is just, it's really annoying. It's really cumbersome. But that's not necessarily the worst part. Well, it's not the good part, but moreover, there is no way of knowing if you have a function layer toggled on or not. Let me stress that again. There's no way of knowing which function layer you have enabled. You could have the F row keys as opposed to numbers. You could have them as the F keys turned on or off. You could have various things as the arrow keys. You could have the right side of the board as like the nav cluster and delete and stuff, but there's no visual indicator to show which function layers you have active. And there have been numerous times where I went to go, I would press function 2, for instance, to activate those nav cluster keys and the delete and whatnot. I would do what I had to do with them, and then I would go to type something and I would forget that I had that layer toggled, and suddenly my cursor would be moving all over the place, or I would forget that I had the arrow keys toggled on. It is a pain. It is a real pain to use, and it's such a shame because aside from that, this board is killer. Like, the switches are awesome. The build quality is fine, for what it is. It's not, exceptional, but certainly par for the course for keyboards in this price range. The RGB backlighting is well implemented. It's a standard layout, so a keycap compatibility is good. All that stuff, fantastic. But this Achilles heel is this really poorly considered function layer implementation. If only there was a way to make it so it just operated the way other keyboards do. You just hold down the function key, press the corresponding button you want, and off you go. That would be perfect. If there was even a toggle to switch between those two modes, between regular function layer mode and their weird toggled function layer mode, that would immediately alleviate all my concerns with this board. But I have not been able to find such a toggle. If there is, it is very well hidden. It is not documented in the manual, and so instead I had to suffer trying to figure out whether if I had function layers left on or turned off, and all these extra keystrokes. Anyway, I've probably made my point. I spent much longer agonizing over this here than I expected to or thought had planned to do. But I just want to express just how annoying that can be. So that is the Achilles heel of this board. Uh, and it's a big one. Now, does that make this board completely useless? No. Would I recommend it for some people still? Yes. We'll get to that in a moment. But after this little rant here, I'm going to summarize the pros and the cons, as I always do, and then I'll provide my final verdict on this board, at which point I'll let you know if it's worth picking up and who should maybe consider it and who maybe wants to steer away. But anyway, let's look at the pros and cons. Alright, as usual, let's start with the pros, and there are quite a few of them. First of all, it's got a nice cable. I know that sounds like a little thing, and it is, but I was really impressed by the cable. It's good length. It is nice, thick, and braided. It is USB Type-C, which is a reversible connector. Overall, A+. Primo cable. Very nice. Second thing that's good about this board is those keycaps. I know I often point out the keycaps on even budget boards like this, and you know, in all honesty, these are not exceptional caps, but they're good. They're going to last, double shot, ABS, nice and durable. Font is a little bit gamery, but not egregious. So overall, a pretty nice set of keycaps, especially considering the budget pricing of this board. Third thing, and perhaps my favorite part of this board, is those lovely Kailh Box White switches. They are so good. I can't express how much I enjoy typing on them. My fingers just feel like they're flying over this keyboard, satisfying clicky-clacky every time I press a key. No wobble to speak of, no scratchiness to speak of, nice smooth action, very precise clicks, and very responsive. Overall, the switches on this board are a major win. Number 4 is the full RGB backlighting. The LEDs are nice and bright, the colors are vivid, there's a wide array of lighting options, and overall it's just well implemented and it looks nice. Of course, we see that on a heck of a lot of keyboards. It's not surprising to see RGB backlighting, but at this price point, this is a really good implementation. And finally, perhaps the biggest pro that I can say about this board, next to those amazing switches, is the price. How can you argue with a $45 60% keyboard with genuine Kailh Box White switches and full RGB backlighting? There are other features you could ask for, like wireless, for instance, which is available on the An Pro, but at this price point, you're getting a heck of a lot of value for your money. Alright, let's talk cons, and this is a pretty short list. Obviously, there's the elephant in the room. We'll talk about that again in just a moment. But one thing that I did want to call out was the material choices for this board. It's pretty plasticky, and it doesn't necessarily feel like the highest quality plastic. Specifically, I'm talking about the case here. The keycaps, they seem pretty good. Like I said, double shot ABS, can't complain. But the overall feel of the board is just that of a slightly budget product. It feels plasticky, it feels kind of light. There was a bit of flex to it. It just doesn't feel super premium, and maybe this is an unfair accusation to level at a $45 keyboard. You can decide for yourself, but at and around this price point, I have seen use of more premium materials, a little bit of metal here and there, at the very least. For instance, metal back plate. So it just feels like a budget product in that sense. Number 2, uncertain warranty. There is a little slip that's packed in with the keyboard. It might talk about the warranty, but it's all in Chinese. I cannot read Chinese. This is sold to an English market, so it would be nice if there was something in there about product registration and warranty in English. I could not find anything about the length of the warranty on Banggood's website. I could find nothing about the length of the warranty on Motospeed's website. If I had to guess, I'd say it's probably warranted for a year, but I don't know. So that's unfortunate. And of course, the elephant in the room, that really poor secondary function layer implementation. I already had my extended rant about it, so I'm not going to go into detail again here. If you really want to hear me go off about it, and you skipped here from the beginning of the video, you can go back about 10 or 15 minutes and you'll hear everything I have to say about it. But the point is, it's a frustrating implementation of secondary function layers that requires way, way, way more keystrokes than it ought to accomplish what you need to. And there's no visual indication of which secondary function layer you have toggled. It's just frustrating to use. It feels cumbersome. It led to making all kinds of errors. It's just bad. It is a bad function layer implementation, and it's a real shame. Okay, so where does that leave us with Motospeed's CK61 60% mechanical keyboard? Well, on the one hand, it is a reasonably well-built product. It's a joy to type on. It has full RGB backlighting, and the price is as low as you could possibly imagine for the feature set that it offers. On the other hand, those function layers are terribly implemented, and it means that doing anything other than basic functions that are available on the primary function layer becomes just a real slog, a real pain. So the way I'm thinking about this is thus. If you're the kind of person who doesn't make use of those secondary functions very much, you don't use the home or page up, page down keys, you don't use the F row keys, you don't use the arrow keys very much, then this board gets my wholehearted recommendation for you. And that could be a variety of people. Maybe just typists who just want to use this purely for basic typing. Maybe gamers who aren't using a whole lot of extraneous keys. For those individuals, this is an excellent, excellent option. However, if you are the kind of person like me who does a lot of productivity type work on your PC, like video editing, for instance, where I make extensive use of the home and end keys, the delete key, these kinds of things, or you're the kind of gamer who uses a lot of those functions, like, for instance, the F keys, then I cannot recommend this board to you because accessing those functions is simply too annoying. It does not, the excellent switches on the board, the low price, do not make up for the hassle of using those secondary function layers. So, there is an audience for this board. It is not me. It might be you. It is not a bad board. In fact, it is one small step away from greatness. This could be the Pro killer if you didn't need wireless, and if it wasn't for the function layer implementation, this board would get my wholehearted recommendation. I'd be raving about this thing, singing its praises, especially given the price point. But as it is, I can only recommend it with that caveat about the secondary function layer implementation. It's a shame. Maybe it's something they could fix in firmware. And please, if you have experience with this board and there is a way to change that functionality, please let me know. I did search. I could not find a solution because I would like to love this board. I want to love this board. And sometimes I do, but as soon as I have to access those other function layers, it just irritates me to no end. So That is my verdict. However, if you've listened to all this, you've weighed the pros and cons, and you like what you see here, if you want to pick up a CK61 of your own, there is of course a link down in the video description, and if you click through and purchase using that link, a portion of your purchase comes back to support the channel, which of course I appreciate very, very much. And for your trouble, there is a coupon code down there that you can apply at checkout on banggood.com, which will bring the price for this board down to a phenomenal $40 US. Absolute steal at that price if you can live with the function layer issue. Alright, special thanks to our friends at banggood.com for supplying the review model that we looked at here today. I hope that you enjoyed this review today. I hope you found it interesting. I hope you found it relaxing. And I look very forward to having you back here next time for another episode of relaxing reviews. Bye for now, guys.